Tonight I want to open with a story that I think a lot of us might know. And I want to talk a bit tonight about a few things that might seem contrary to what you grew up believing and hearing. And I think it's actually one of those things that if we can get a different perspective, I think everything can change. And it's about faith. I want to talk about faith tonight. So if you would, turn with me there. If you're there, say I'm there. If you need some time, say, hold up. Everybody's there? Okay, great. Then let's read, starting in verse 40. It says, "Now when Jesus had returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. As Jesus went, the people pressed around him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all of her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him, and she touched the fringe, the edge of his garment. And it says immediately her discharge of blood ceased. And Jesus said, 'Who was it that touched me?' When all denied it, Peter said, 'Master, the crowds are surrounding you and everyone's pressing in on you.' But Jesus said, 'No, someone touched me. For I perceive, I understand, I feel that power has gone out from me.' And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, 'Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace.'" Go in peace. I want to work from a title tonight, a subject, if you will, sneaky faith. Sneaky faith. I know at first glance it seems like those words don't really go together. I've heard of sneaky link, but I haven't heard of sneaky faith. Anybody heard of sneaky faith? I'm sorry, Lord forgive me. But sneaky and faith, these two words, they don't seem to really go together. I don't know about you, but I grew up in a place where faith was something that was always supposed to be bold, out there, crazy, big. Enough faith to walk on water. I've preached the sermon, I've sat in a Bible study. That's the call. We all know if you're going to walk in faith, you've got to do something that's out there. You can't play it safe. You can't play it in the background. You got to step out. We've all heard this, right? It's not just me. I never really conceived that there's any other faith that God would actually move upon other than a bold, crazy, confident faith. But tonight I want to talk about a faith that on the outside looking in, it seems small, seemingly insignificant, not enough for a miracle to come. Sneaky faith. Sneaky faith. Touch your neighbor, help him preach my message. Say, "Hey, neighbor." Hey, you got to say it loud. Say, "Hey, neighbor." Hey, neighbor. It's your moment. Sneaky faith. Touch your other neighbor, your second option neighbor. Say, "Hey, other neighbor." I know you were my first option. And there ain't nothing sneaky about this. But have you even heard of sneaky faith? Have you heard of sneaky faith? Sneaky faith. I've been a dad now for a little over, 2 years now? About a little over a year? A year, or give or take. And there's one thing I've noticed about kids. It's that kids can be sneaky. Yeah? I saw one the other day. It was so funny. I caught him. You know how kids, they're still in that phase where they eat their boogers, but it's public. You know what I'm saying? I know y'all do too. Don't even play like you ain't ate them or something. Anyway, but kids will eat their boogers not even on the low. They'll kind of be like this. I'm like, "What you doing over there?" And I saw this little boy. He just picked one out, ate it. I said, "You're nasty." I saw that. But the way he looked at me was like, he was sneaky. He was trying to sneak it in. I was like, this is disgusting. I'm sorry. But kids, they can be sneaky. I don't know if you were one of these children. I was one of these children. I grew up with parents that cared about my grades. Anybody having parents that care? Yeah, come on. Good, yeah. What a problem, right? Parents that care about you. Could you imagine? I had these parents that cared. So much so that I knew at times there was moments where it made more sense for me to be sneaky than to be outright. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? There's a couple times a year that would happen, and normally it'd be when I'd have a grade on my homework or a practice or a test, you know what I'm saying, that was not up to standard. You know what I'm saying? Anybody, you probably had some crazy parents if it was just like an A only. I didn't have those parents. I had like passing above 70, 80, like the higher it got, the better they were about it. That makes sense? But Lord, bring a 40 in that house. Do you know what I'm saying? And I grew up and I started to learn what these boundaries were of when I could be like, here's my grades, and here's like, oh God, let me hide my homework. You know what I'm saying? And I had the thing where I didn't hide it very well. Like I put it in my backpack. You might put it in their backpack, and you're like, your mom, or your dad, or whoever it is, just opens up your backpack and she pulls the thing out, and you see it, and she's like, hey, can I talk to you about something? And I'm like, sure, Mom. What's this? And you immediately have like 50 excuses. Like, oh no, see, what had happened was that's a practice test. No. She said I could make it up. She said I could fix it. Do you know what I'm saying? Anybody have that? That would be my excuse. The worst would be report cards. Everybody get a report card and it's so, and you didn't know like email and phone calls existed and like stuff they print off and give to parents. Like as a kid, you're like, how do they know when the report cards are coming? I didn't tell them. So I'm like trying to be sneaky, like, I don't have my report card. And my mom's like, where's your report card? And I was like, what's that? Played it off, right? And I'd be really smart about how, or I thought I was smart, about how I would hide it from them. I'm being sneaky to avoid the inevitable. And, report cards are one thing. Anybody, report cards happen. That's every now and then. There was something that really got my parents going. And I don't know if y'all grew up in school like this or if it's just where I'm from, but when you're a kid, they have these little clips, and at the beginning of the day, it starts on green, you know what I'm saying? And everything is gold, it's beautiful. It's like, oh, this is amazing. This is how I'm great, And I had this propensity, like this problem, where, you could probably tell, I wanted to talk all the time. It wouldn't stop. I wanted attention in class. I was bored. I could read already in second grade. I was like, I already know how to read this book. I don't need to do this. I was done with it. And so I would talk in class, and quickly I would see that green go to yellow. And you know what yellow means? Yellow means like, you better cool out. You better chill. Because if you take one more step, you already know what's coming. This is the time to pump the brakes. Rethink your actions. Otherwise, you get moved to red. And everybody knows, regardless of where you're from, if you get moved to red, your parents are getting a note or something, they're getting a phone call, it's going to be bad. And so, frequently, I would find myself in the yellow. I kind of lived in the yellow. I was like a yellow frequent flyer, you know what I'm saying? I was in the yellow. And some days I would get in the red. And I had this great plan. I was like, you know what, when I get into the red, I'm going to get that card, and I'm going to just like hide it. It'd always be on a Friday too, so I have to hide it for a whole weekend, not just for one day. And my great plan was, like in my 7-year-old handwriting, I'm gonna sign my mom's name, like they're not gonna know. But I'm gonna hide this, and I'm gonna keep it from my parents so they don't see. I'm sneaky. But I'd always get caught. It just kind of happened. I got better as I got older. I think we all do. Confession time. But there's this thing in us that I realize that we tend to sneak around, and there's a couple of reasons why we do that. I think we sneak around because we wonder, is this going to change how we are? Are you going to be mad at me? Or are you going to be disappointed in me? Am I losing trust? Do you not trust me now? Or worse, am I going to be in trouble? And I think it's easy to see this as kids, like kids are sneaky. But I don't think it's just kids. I think at times can be us. where we sneak and we don't really show our true selves to other people because we don't want them to really see us, because we wonder how we're going to be received. Will they be impressed by us still if they were to know that about us? If we were forthright and just said, hey, this is what it is, would I get the response and the relationship that I really desired? And I think we sneak because we think sneaking actually will grant us that type of access or that type of acceptance, because we're hiding the real thing and presenting something that's different, right? And I don't think we just do this with our friends and with relationships. I think where this plays out the most is in our relationship with God. I don't know about you guys, but there's this verse that sometimes I think about. It comes to my mind. It's out of Hebrews chapter 4. It says, "Now therefore, let us then boldly, with confidence, approach the throne of grace, where we will receive grace and find forgiveness in our time of need." And that whole idea always has been kind of foreign to me. So you mean to tell me that I can approach God when everything on the inside of me tells me I need to sneak? Where I don't need to actually come to him, but I need to play it low key and keep it from him. Yeah? Or I don't feel like we boldly approach God, especially when we do things wrong, or when we've made some mistakes and we don't really know how he's going to take us. That we can be sneaky. And this story tonight, it got me because there's something about this story that stands out from all the rest. This is the only time where I've seen a miracle happen when it wasn't this crazy, bold moment of trusting God and stepping out in faith. And, it doesn't seem like it fits the story. It doesn't fit in our paradigm of how God rewards faith, how miracles happen. Miracles are for the people that do it the right way and go about it, that they take a deep, dark, they just step out of the deep darkness of what they're in and they're like, I'm all in on Jesus, right? And I think we expect God to answer that, but not the other. And that's the story today. If you look at it, at the beginning, there's these two characters. There's this one man, his name is Jairus. He's a synagogue ruler. He's a pastor. He's the guy that's got it together. I'm not one of those, but He's the guy that you expect faith from. And the story, it presents him as Jesus comes. He's fresh off of this boat, and he walks into this crowd of people who've been waiting for him. And they all have a need. They all have a want. They all believe Jesus can do something for them. But Jairus, he has something different than everybody else. Jairus has a name. He has a position. He has an authority. And he has a need. And he pushes through the crowd. He pushes to all the people. And he comes to the feet of Jesus and says, hey, Jesus, I need a miracle. He's bold in his faith. His daughter is dying, and he believes that Jesus can heal her. It's the type of faith that we read about. But then there's this other character. She doesn't have a name, but we know she has an issue. That she, for 12 years, has been bleeding, and everything that she's tried just doesn't seem to work. And instead of coming to Jesus and dropping at his feet and saying, I have a need, will you help me? She sneaks. And she hides. She comes up behind Jesus, and she doesn't even have enough faith to touch him, but the edge of his garment. The way I would perceive that this is happening is Jesus is over there, and she's just kind of, moving in the background of the crowd. She's not pressing through people. She's slowly biding her time, getting closer and closer and closer until she's right there. And instead of, Jesus, will you help me? Or ask at all, what does she do? She just touches the edge and goes back into the background. She's sneaky. How does she get a miracle? You ever thought about that? She stole a miracle from Jesus. She didn't even ask. Isn't that nuts? Jesus was not even in on it. You know, like he wasn't even like, sure. She came up and stole a miracle off of him. And he's like, which one of y'all touch me? And I find it so interesting how this story is told, and it's told so intricately. There's these little bitty details that you notice, and you're like, why is that there? Because in Mark 5, it's a different story. We see that she catches this thought, this idea of, oh, if I just touch his garment. That there's this faith on the inside that she's like, I don't even need to ask him, I just need to touch him. But that's not recorded at all in the Gospel of Luke. The only thing that's recorded is that she's hiding. And she's sneaky. You know, I think her predicament, this 12 years, it speaks a lot to the human condition that we all are in. Not just some of us, but all of us. It says that she had spent all of her living. She had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all of her living, this is more than just all of her money. It's her house. Any land that she might have owned, anything that she ever possessed got spent on trying to get better. Just trying to get better. 12 years. Spent all of her living on many physicians, and she couldn't be healed by anyone. Mark says that she suffered much under many physicians, spending all that she had, and she didn't grow any better, but rather she grew worse. And I just think, for a lot of us, man, this is our story. This is a picture of us. Or we can try these different things, and we're thinking, maybe this will work. And we get to the end of it, and we're like, it didn't really work the way that I thought. Because while in the moment it might have made it better, it's still here. Anybody? And let me just put it like this. I have a nephew. He's turning 4. He turned 4 this week, which is so crazy. He just grew up so fast. But I have this memory that I often revisit in my mind just because he was the cutest little kid ever. And me and Demi are about to have a son, so I'm super excited about that. Yeah. And I remember one day I'm at my parents' house, and he really, really loves this one toy. And this toy was, you know how kids, they have these little learning things. You give kids toys, but it's to teach them. It's like a trick by parents, and then you eventually learn, oh, this isn't fun, this is just to teach me something. But this is one of those that he actually enjoyed. And the goal of this thing was to teach him his shapes. And there was, it's a square and a circle and a triangle and all these different, you have a little block and you try to fit it into, you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I remember him bringing it over to me on the couch, and he's sitting down next to me, and he's looking at me like, are you going to play with me? I'm like, yeah, I'll play with you. Okay, sure, here we are. And he grabs the square. I think that was his favorite one, And I'm watching him, and instead of going to the square, he goes to the circle. And we're sitting there, and he's just like, which I don't know if he likes just hitting it or if he thinks it's going to work. But I just was like, no, baby, that's the wrong one. That's not the one, baby. Stop. It's that one. This one. And he just looks at me and is like, this one? No. And over and over and over again, he's just like, and the thing I think that got me was, it wasn't as if it didn't kind of work, because you can get a corner in a circle. You know what I mean? He was like, no, it's working. See, it's going. And I'm like, no, that doesn't fit. It will never fit. If that was going to work, it would have by now. And I think for us, and this woman here, she had spent 12 years going to physicians to be healed and could not be healed. And I wonder if she felt, this time it's going to be different. And I think she probably went to the first visit thinking, you know what? This is going to work. And then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and then the fifth, and the 12th year of going over and over and over to the same things, hoping that something different would happen. And I think that's a picture of us, isn't it? Where we go back to the same things that could never really heal us. They just seem to have the appearance of it. Where the attention was nice. It made us feel not lonely on the inside, but on the back side of that thing, we're worse than when we started. Where that relationship we said would be different. And we went back to it, and we went back to it, and then all our friends said, you know what, that's probably not working for you. It's probably, if it was going to work, it would have by now. But we go back, and it's not because we're dumb. It's because for a split second we really believe that it's going to be different. Where we go back to the thing we run to. We all run to something. Just because you hide it well, just because you're sneaky doesn't mean that you don't run to something. We all run to something. And I feel like God is saying, if that thing was going to work, it would have. And she gets to a point where she says, you know what, I've tried everything else. I've given every single one of these things a shot. But you know the one thing I haven't? There's this man by the name of Jesus. And I heard he heals people like me. And you know what? I'm going to take a step of faith, and I'm just going to say, you know what? This might not work, but I've tried everything else. And she moved on a maybe. And she did it the only way that she knew how. And I think for us, the call of God tonight is, God, I've tried everything else. And each one of those things left me empty and broken. And I know that there is this man named Jesus who everybody seems to say it's different with him. And I wonder if you're going to have enough faith tonight to say, you know what, maybe you ought to give him a shot. Because what I've been doing ain't working. But I know Jesus, there's a chance. And she gets to this place and she sees Jesus and she finds her moment. And she's scared. You think about it, like why would she be scared? Well, there's a number of reasons. I don't know if you guys know this, the contextual background of this, that women don't exactly have a great social standing in this time. And not only that, this woman, she has an issue. And this issue isn't just that she's bleeding. It's this issue has caused her to be removed from the community of people that she belongs to. That her issue has now kept her from being able to even be in the synagogue. Which is so funny that the synagogue ruler is the very one that would not allow her to step in, and he needs a miracle. But because of her issue, because she would have to walk into every single space around every single person that she would see for every day for 12 years and say, hey, I'm unclean. And if anybody were to touch her, they would have to go through ceremonial washing to be able to go to church on Sunday or Saturday. Isn't that crazy? I know some of you in here, man, you sneak into spaces like this because, if anybody else in here were to know anything about me, they would not want to sit next to me. They wouldn't want a real relationship with me because I don't look the part. I haven't played the part. And I know a lot of times we go into church spaces and people are particular. And we don't always measure up. And this woman, she has this fear, if I were to really just come up and just say, Jesus, I have this issue, heal me. The question is, what would they say? And not only that, what would he say? Would he accept me? Would he heal me? Or would he tell me, hey, I don't do that. That's too far gone. You're unclean. And I think for a lot of us, I've seen this everywhere. Like, there's so many people who go to church and they're like, man, this place isn't for me because I came in there and they didn't have a space for me. The one time I told them, I'm struggling with this, me and my significant other, they're like, oh, you need to get that right. before you're a part of this. And what we've done is we've made Jesus difficult to touch. Since when has Jesus been difficult to touch? Where we need to sneak into places and play the part in order for him to accept us. The other thing I love about Jesus in this story, it's so different than his normal interactions. Jesus in the story, he makes a big deal about this, you know? Like he wasn't just like, cool, she got a miracle. Because it's Jesus, like he reads people's minds earlier in this story. Like, you know that, right? Like, he knows who does it. You think about that? Why would he be like, who touched me? It's Jesus. He knows. He makes this huge deal, this huge scene. And you want to know why I know it's a scene? It says in the text. It says, as Jesus, when the people pressed around him, she touched him, right? Who was it that touched me? Is this when all denied it? Not when some denied it. Not when they denied it. When all denied it. So this is a scene. Jesus gets touched. I just imagine. Can you imagine Jesus just walking people just everywhere? You ever see that little Kanye West thing where he's just like, yeah, I can imagine. Or Jesus being like, I just wonder how Jesus walked. Like, hey, good to see you, bless you. Just handing out miracles and kissing babies. You know what I'm saying? Like just Jesus being Jesus. I just, in my glorified, imagination, I'm just like, Jesus just strutting like, yeah, I'm here to do miracles. Here I am. Touch my robe. It's like, that's him. And he's there and he's minding his own business. Dude comes in. He's like, hey, bro, come on. I'll come to your house, bro. Don't do all this. Come on, let's go. And you imagine Jairus is like, Jesus only went to like 2 people's houses by name. Him and Zacchaeus, the wee little man. The wee little man was he, you know that one? Anybody grew up in church, know the song? Can you imagine? He's just strutting right next to Jesus like, man, I heard you just cast out like a legion of demons out of a dude like across the sea over there. You just came back. Like, that's cool, bro. That's really cool. I can just imagine just like chopping it up with Jesus. See, this is why our Bible isn't fun to read, because we don't think of Jesus like a normal person. Like we just think he floats. But Jesus, he's walking and he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll go with you. Let's go. And he's got his whole little entourage, his 12 disciples with him. They're just rolling through. People are, pressing against him, trying to get a miracle. And his lady, and I already did this, but, I just want to do it again. The lady, I can imagine she's being crazy. She's just like getting down like. And she touches the edge, the fringe. Even the word is so like dramatic. You know what I mean? Like it didn't just like touch the edge of his garment. Touch the fringe. It's such a the fringe is like the hair hanging off the very end. You know what I'm saying? It's like the thing you can only see in the light. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That's what it is. It's like, but like on the low, because she didn't want anybody to see. And Jesus is just like, like, hey, kiss me, baby, And he just stops. And he's like, hey, which one of y'all touched me? I think of Chris Tucker. Which one of y'all kicked me? Anyway, which one of y'all touched me? And can you imagine being like, Jesus probably had an attitude because it was like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me, Jesus. I didn't touch you. I just want a miracle, but I didn't touch you. And he asked everybody. They're like, hey, was it you? Hey. And no, you. Was it you? You too far away. It wasn't you. Was it you? You. Was it you? Everybody's like, no, it wasn't me. And this is the picture of the story. The lady is sitting there like, he's asked everybody but me. This is just as awkward as when he tells me to touch my other neighbor. It's as awkward. And he narrows down the choices, and I can imagine Jesus being like, was it you? And at first, I can see how terrified this woman might be, for Jesus to make such a big deal about being touched, especially with her background. I'm unclean, this man of God, the Messiah who hands out miracles, got touched by an unclean person. The immediate reaction is like, oh God, I knew I shouldn't have done this. I know that a miracle just happened, but like I don't feel good about how it just happened. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think at first when we think about this walk with God, we think that Jesus, when he has this moment where he does meet us, and he'll meet us in brokenness. You don't need to get it figured out first. She didn't get healed, then come to Jesus. You realize that, right? Like this is a picture of what happens when we come to Jesus with our brokenness. He heals us. We're altogether different than when we started. Yeah, come on, can you get an amen? Yeah, so that's the good news of Jesus. If you get this one thing, get this tonight. Jesus is not waiting for you to stop bleeding in order to heal you. He's not waiting for you to put that away in order to heal you. He's waiting for you to have enough faith to come to him. To give up on the other thing and say, you know what? I don't really know if this is going to work or not, but like, and do you realize how much that is? The edge is this much. And I think we make Jesus out to be like, oh, you need all the faith in the world, when all he's saying is, just need this much. And her perspective of him is, oh no. Now I have to explain myself to him. And I think that's what we think God does to us. We come to him and he heals us, and then we're like, you know what? All right, God, I got like 7 years worth of stuff I got to like unload on you, because that's what we do. I feel bad about it, you know. And she tells him why everything happened, and Jesus is just patient. He just sits, he just waits. Just lets it happen. And I think at first read, the expectation is Jesus is doing this in order to expose her. And under further inspection, what I realized was, yes, Jesus wanted to expose her, but not for the reason that you think. But he wanted to expose her in order to cover her. Do you know that in this text, it is the only text in the entire New Testament, in the entire life of Jesus, where he refers to someone as a daughter? In the whole thing, the whole book. It's the only one. Where this woman without a name but with an issue comes in as a broken person just trying to give Jesus one shot, and she walks away a daughter. A woman without an identity, a woman without hope, a woman who couldn't even step into a social structure, who couldn't even accept the title of daughter because she would have been shunned by her family because of her brokenness, is now being called daughter by God. Hello? If that ain't the gospel, I don't know what is. That Jesus has given us an identity that we didn't deserve. Do you know that verse I read earlier, that we can boldly approach the throne of grace? Because he gives us grace, and he gives us this ability. He says mercy, to receive mercy and find grace. That's what it says. Do you know what mercy is? Mercy is getting what you don't deserve. I deserve this, and I'm not getting what I deserve. Do you know what grace is? Getting what you never could deserve. Different things. This girl comes, and what she gets is she finds mercy. She gets what she doesn't deserve. She isn't shunned. She's accepted. And not only that, she's given grace. She's getting called something that she never had been called before by somebody who never in the past would have even associated with her. And God calls this woman daughter. It's nuts. And that's the most beautiful part of this story. I don't know if you picked up on this. Jairus and this woman, they're foils of each other. Do you want to foil this? This is a big, English word. You put them side by side, and it tells you something when you look at both of them. You look at them separately, this one informs the other one. But when you look at them together, something is being communicated. And that's the part about the 12 years. It says that Jairus, he had an only daughter. An only daughter. About 12 years of age. And she was dying. And just to take a moment to look at Jairus. Jairus is a synagogue leader. You know the people that don't like Jesus? He is like one of those guys. But he's desperate enough that he comes to Jesus and say, you know what, I don't know how I feel about you. It might cost me some relationships, but I'm in need and I'm desperate because my little girl is dying. And I don't know if you know anything about a daddy's love, but a daddy's love is different than anything else, especially for his little girls. And this father, he has this one little girl. She's 12 years old, and she's dying. And he breaks off all the rules, all the expectations, and he comes and he lays himself in front of Jesus. The synagogue ruler, to get on his knees in front of another person, especially a rabbi, doesn't make sense. He's in complete submission of like, you know what, Jesus, like, I'm putting all that aside. I am so desperate. I need you. And it's put next to this woman who has an issue of blood for 12 years. Do you know who Jesus is in the story? Jesus is representative of a heavenly father to a daughter who doesn't know she's a daughter. And that's the gospel, guys. That God saw our brokenness and all the things that we've ran into, all the things that are just like not it. Saw us bleeding out, trying everything else. And instead of him playing the back seat and just letting it happen, he sent his son. His son took on what we deserved and gave us what we didn't. And do you know what's even so crazy about this? He didn't even make us try hard to earn it. Just enough to be sneaky about it. Just enough to try. Nothing that you would have really expected or thought much of. It's just this much. And that's this thing with God. He's invited us and he's called us into a life with him that starts out with us just like, as broken as we are, just like, this is me. This is all I got. And we think that like we got to sneak around him because we wonder if he'll like us or not. But in reality, God's always been waiting. And sometimes he'll let you get into a place where you're tired of hiding. And he just says, if you're ready to come out here, I'm ready to tell you who you are. And I think that the sad thing about it is we give out things that we shouldn't because we don't know who we are. We give our heart away on discount because we don't know who we are. We don't really walk in big faith because we don't know who we are. You know what's so crazy about the story? I've actually read this. It's church fathers, they get this account. It's not biblical, but it's outside. It tells about it. This woman, after this moment, she goes and she builds a monument. She puts the rest of her money that she has together, and she builds a statue, a monument of this moment where Jesus healed her and he told her who she was. And there was this ruler, this bad guy, he destroys it. Did you know what happened to him? He died by getting struck by lightning. Don't mess with God's kids, man. Don't mess with his daughters. I think for some of you in here, you've been waiting and wishing and hoping that you could be something more than you are. And you just wonder, can that even really happen? Because I only have about this much faith. You know that's what God says? He says, just need a faith of the size of a mustard seed, and you can move a mountain. I think sometimes the biggest mountain that we face is the brokenness in our own heart. Because it's the only thing we see every day. It's the mountain that we wake up to every single day. We're like, you know what? I'm never going to get over this. I'm never going to get past this. This is always going to be part of my life. Anxiety is not tomorrow. Depression is what I know. I'm stuck with me. With this much faith. One word from Jesus, everything can change. We can all change. I know this sermon isn't one of those, like, get out your seat and shout, But it is one from a place that's calling you to maybe consider. Maybe I've tried everything and maybe it's not working. But maybe I ought to give Jesus a shot. A real shot. Even if the only thing you can do right now is be sneaky about it. Come in and come out. Don't say anything to anybody. Because you've been hurt by church before, been judged before. You don't know all the things to say. You don't know when to lift your hands or if it's weird or not. Can I do this? You don't know the Bible songs. Father Abraham had me something. You don't know it. And you think, once I get my behavior right, once I get my stuff together, then I'll come to church. Then I'll have a real relationship with Jesus, something that's genuine and authentic. And I love God. I love the idea of it. I pray before I eat, but my life. It doesn't touch my life because I just think like I could never be that. Like I could never really walk that way. So let me just not pretend like I'm that. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to be judged because you know what? Like I got stuff in my life and I keep on running into it and I don't know how to change. And I think God's just calling you into a moment where you say, you know what, God, I don't have it figured out, but here's what I do know, that you're the one that can fix it. And we just move on a maybe. And we say, God, I've tried everything else, but I'm going to give this a shot. And you'll be so surprised to see that God is just waiting to tell you who you are. To give you hope to believe that it's better than what it's been. And so right now in this moment, as Ben's coming up about to play, I want you just to stand with me if you would. And this is not one of those that I'm trying to like emotionally manipulate you to like do something. But I do genuinely believe that God responds to faith even if it's just this much. Even if it's sneaky. I just want to give you a moment, and this isn't just like, I want to give my life to Jesus for the first time. Like, we've made a relationship with Jesus a one-time decision where I've raised my hand in church and I prayed and God loves me. Yeah, true. But this thing with him is so much bigger than that. So if you would, every eye closed, head bowed. I want to give you a moment just for you. Where if you've been in a place in life where you've been trying a lot of different things and it just doesn't seem to work, and you feel God calling you into a moment with him where you do reach out, and even if it is sneaky, it is just touching the hem of his garment that you actually reach. Say, Jesus, I want a life with you. I want to follow you. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I do want something real. I don't want just a moment. I want moments. I want a life with you. If that's you right now in faith, would you just raise your hand and just say, God, I want a life with you. There's others of you in here that you've got some stuff you're ashamed of, and you're wondering if God will accept you. And I just want you to know that God's good for it. If you trust him with it, he's good for it. And if that's you, if you just want to confess, just you and God, like, God, I've made some mistakes, but I want a relationship with you. I want a clean slate. Would you just raise your hand too? I just want to pray for you. Jesus, I thank you just for the honest hearts in the room that said, I don't have it figured out. I don't have it together. My faith at best has been sneaky. But God, I want to believe. I want to live a life that follows you. I want to surrender my life to you, Jesus. Lord, I pray that you would have a moment with every single person in this room right now, Lord, that you would tell them who they are. That they're your kid. That they're your daughter. That they're your son. And it doesn't matter how long they've been bleeding, they can always come to you. Jesus, I pray that they would feel, those who carry guilt and shame and regret and remorse, God, I pray that they would feel forgiveness, Lord. That you would forgive them, that you would cleanse them and clean them from all the mess and the brokenness that life can happen. Lord, we often run to things that are broken because we're broken. So, Lord, I pray right now in the name of Jesus that you would pour out healing in this room, that you would heal broken hearts. Maybe open our eyes to see you for who you are. Jesus, we love you. It's in your name.